At the hospital, a baby's cries fulfilled the room's sound. A massacre killing was happening outside of the hospital. It was a purge day after all, so what did you expect? A beautiful baby girl was crying out the whole room. Other rooms of the hospital could hear her. This child had blonde hair, pale skin, and gray eyes. Her father didn't understand and did not find this normal either, considering the fact that his eyes were green and his wife, Mrs. Bastion's eyes were hazel. This put fury into Mr. Bastion and made him scream at his wife, "Did you cheat on me?" Mrs. Bastion jumped a little and then replied back with stuttering, "No, I would never." The doctor chimed in to their small argument. "Well, according to some tests, she is both of your children. Because she has the same DNA from both of you, that's your kid." Mr. Bastion looked at the child and then looked back at the doctor. This made him even more angry, because I swear, if he was lying, you do not want to see him as angry as possible. "Then why does she have gray eyes?" The doctor jumped, but then calmly replied with, "We aren't really sure, to be honest, sir." A couple hours later, they left the hospital. The whole drive back, Mr. Bastion thought, "This can't be my kid. How can this be? How can this be my kid? I have green eyes and she has hazel eyes. How?" 4 years later, a 4-year-old girl named Purge sat in her room playing with some toys she had. The light that reflected out of her window reflected off to her blonde hair. Outside of her room, she heard her parents screaming and yelling. She would hear this on a daily basis, so it was really much normal for her. She would listen to the argument a little bit more to hear one sentence that always wanted to make her cry. "She isn't even our daughter. I bet a couple years ago that doctor was lying to us about her being our fucking child." Purge tried to hold back tears of sadness after hearing that sentence. Every day she would hear her dad talking shit about her, and her mom trying to defend her. Purge did her best to ignore her father, and it was working perfectly fine until her dad barged into her room with her mother following behind him. "Sean, stop! She can't help what she looks like." She was cut off by Mr. Bastion locking Mrs. Bastion out of her room. Her dad grabbed Purge by the collar. "You wanna know what you are? Not my daughter. You're a fucking abomination," he yelled and screamed at Purge, not his high, low, good voice. Purge started whimpering for mercy, but he ignored her facial expression. He took a plastic bat Purge had in the corner of her room and started beating her with it. Purge started screaming in pain, for it hurt really bad. "Dada, stop! It hurts!" Mr. Bastion ignored her screams of pain. "You deserve that, you little piece of shit!" Purge laid on the ground with a cut on her head, bruises all over her body, and a bloody nose. Her mother was finally able to break down the door, but when she found her almost beaten to death daughter laying on the ground, she was paralyzed, stunned. All her thoughts were paused. She walked over slowly to her child. "Purge? Oh my God! Purge! Oh my God!" She cradles Purge's weak body. Purge was still alive, but she wished she was dead. "Are you okay, my sweet daughter?" Purge hugged her mother back. I'm okay, Mama. I'm really hurt right now. Dad hurt me. Mrs. Bastion cradled Purge's weak body once more. I'm so sorry your father did this. They both cried in agony for what just happened. 3 years later. It's Purge's birthday today. She is now turning 7. As Purge rushed down the stairs, she was greeted by her brother, and when it comes to greet, a punch on the shoulder that didn't mean sup little sis, but go die in a hole, you little bit. Once she got to the kitchen, her mother instantly got her attention to her and hugged her. Happy birthday, Purge! She hugged Purge, and Purge hugged back. Her dad came up to her and whispered only one word in her ear. Last. Purge got confused by this, but shrugged it off later. While celebrating, Purge's dad interrupted the whole thing while casting Purge's brother Ben a concerning look. Purge, my dear, me and your brother have a gift for you. He looked at Mrs. Bastion and Ben again with the same concerning look he gave Ben earlier. Purge was now excited. Really? What is it? Purge was excited for whatever she was about to receive. Little did she know she was going to regret liking it later and have full hate towards it. Are you ready, Purge? Mrs. Bastion came up to Purge and whispered and hugged her. He leaned down to her height and whispered in her ear, I'm so sorry. Purge was now confused and a little bit scared, then excited. All of a sudden, Mr. Bastion grabbed Mrs. Bastion by her hair and thrashed her outside. Purge was about to ask what was happening, but she was tied down by her older brother Ben. Ben then pushed Purge against the window along with the help of her father, Mr. Bastion. Purge's face was pressed up against the window. The thing she saw were her mother and an approaching killer. Purge panicked and cried, Mom? No! The killer came up to her mother and raised his axe and thrashed it down at Purge's mom. The axe entered through her chest, slicing open through her rib cage. Purge cried and cried while screaming, No! Stop! Make it stop! Please stop! Make it stop! Make it stop! Make it stop! The axe kept thrashing and thrashing into Purge's mother's body. After 7 minutes of watching her mom dying, after the whole show was over, and the killer went to go find another victim, Purge's father untied her from the rope that binded her body together. He then picked her up by her collar and threw her across the room, making her hit her head against the wall. Purge's father walked up to her and leaned down to her height, while pinning his arm onto Purge's neck, choking her a little. Shh. He let go, and Purge caught a breath. Purge crawled to the window where she was pressed up against earlier. Her mother's mauled-apart body made her want to vomit. She went back to where she hid her head and curled up into a ball and started crying. The only person who cared about her was now gone. The only person who loved her was now just a memory. Purge ran up back to her room and cried for hours, until her eyes closed for slumber, to go away from reality and just dream of her mother still being here. But the only thing was, this wasn't a dream. 11 years later. Purge is now 18 years old. He descended down the stairs to hear her dad rambling about shit to her horrible stepmother that she could care less about. Her stepmom was as worse as her father. Her stepmom never cared about her. She always ignored her, hit her, and yelled at her for things she never did. Purge's dad started dating her stepmom ever since she was 15. She went to the fridge to find nothing to eat. All that was in there was rotten butter and an empty milk carton. Ugh, fuck it. Skipping breakfast like always. Before she even got out the door, her stepmother started scolding her, saying it was her fault that she didn't go to the store. But anytime she tried to go to the store, or anywhere in general, her parents yelled at her for even leaving the house. Her father got into the conversation and slapped Purge across the face. Purge hated her home. Ever since her biological mother died, she's been suicidal. Sometimes, in midnight, she will go to the kitchen and grab a knife and cut herself. Or sometimes she would even draw pictures of her dead, hung, or even her poisoning herself on purpose. Purge's dad started screaming at her again. Purge couldn't take it and did something she thought she would never really do, or even sometimes do. She punched her father in the face. While her father was down, she took the chance to run. She escaped. She cried while running. Her real mom was the only one who cared about her. The only one who loved her. But she'll never be loved or cared for again. She went to class because it was the only time she could be away from her parents. Lunchtime hit and Purge went to the bathroom. When she was almost finished, she felt something grab her neck and what seemed to be attempting to choke her. Purge got scared, but also in a tough mood. She felt the urge to take someone out, and she instantly attacked, throwing a punch to the person's face. Blood splattered all over Purge's fist. Purge realized what she had done, and for some reason regretted it at first, but then something changed about her think. The girl she punched was Emily Gravesight, a girl who bullied Purge her whole life in school. There was a note that was too wet and in blood, but she could read some things that stated some weird things. One line that was visible to read was, "Finally, after taking Purge's father and making a deal with a hitman to kill Purge's mom, I decided to take out Purge as well." Purge dropped the note on the floor. Mrs. Bellsnot, the principal, walked in to find Emily's unconscious body and Purge with Emily's blood on her fist. Purge froze, not knowing what to say, but then remembered the note, but now the note was too wet and in blood. Purge couldn't even read the line that she read earlier in her head. Purge was sent home because of her violent action. Some things got in her way, therefore she got home kind of late. Ugh, I'll probably be home by midnight. My dad's gonna get pissed off at me again. A lot of traffic and a lot of walking, her estimated time was correct. It was midnight, and her dad was waiting by the door with a not-so-happy look on his face. "Sorry it took so long, Dad. There was a lot of traffic today." He cut her off by her dad's scream, "I don't want to hear your damn lies." He dragged her by the collar back into the house. He sat her down in a chair. "I don't know who the hell you think you are." He proceeded to punch her, while Ben and Purge's stepmom held her down. Purge did the same kick she did to that girl, but it did very little damage to her father. She kept punching Purge until she was bleeding. Purge whacked her dad across the face and was unable to escape, because apparently she hit her stepmom and brother too. Taking the chance to run, she instantly went up to her room and locked the door. She plopped on her bed crying and sobbing. Snot covered her blanket, but she could care less. She was crying. "Why did my mom have to die? Why could she just still be here?" Purge cried until she fell asleep. Sleeping was her only escape from freedom besides school. Every night she dreamed that her mother was still here. However, that dream was not a reality anymore. Two hours later. It was 2:32 in the morning. Purge woke up, drenched in sweat. For some reason, she felt a presence around her room. When she got up, and she almost tripped over something that seemed to be a bat. Purge was confused now. She thought in her head, "Why the hell is there a bat in my room?" Then a dim red light shined in her room. Purge was starting to think this was just a dream, but then she touched the bat and realized it wasn't. Purge noticed something carved into her floor that said, "Make them suffer." Purge looked right beside the message to see a picture of her father, her older brother, and her stepmother. Right in front of the carving was a mask where the red dim light shined, and the bat that she almost tripped over. When the thing said suffer, she knew it meant kill. Purge thought for a second. They all do deserve this. They all deserve to die. They all heard me scream and cry. A twisted smile turned around Purge's blank expression. Her twisted smile touched almost both of the ends of her eyes. She grabbed the mask and explored it a little. It had red X's for eyes and a cartoonish-looking smile that for some reason was creepy. Purge put the mask on her face and turned on the light for it. Purge grabbed the bat in front of her and then creeped down the stairs, descending down to her living room. Purge's dad, stepmother, and older brother were in the living room laughing and talking and triggering things about Purge. Purge snapped and now had enough of her family's bullshit. She flipped over the lights that turned off the living room lighting. Her mother was passed out drunk, so it didn't really disturb her. However, Mr. Bastion and Ben's attention was now at the highest, for the lights were turned off. "Who did that?" Ben was turning his head everywhere, trying to find where the source of the person who turned off the light was. "Ben, go flip back on the lights." Ben went to go flip the switches back on, but was all of a sudden felt something or someone near him. He turned to find his head the other side of the room, only to meet a whack to his head from a bat. Blood drizzled down the wall and was decorating the floor. Purge was the cause of that. Mr. Bastion finally found a flashlight to see that his daughter has bashed his own son almost to death. Purge continued beating Ben until he bled to death, but would stop when something hit her shoulder. Purge fell to the ground. Her father has hit her with a wooden figure, but it was also a little big, so that's why she fell. Purge got up because a single hit from a little wooden object wouldn't take her down that easy. She swung her bat at him to shove the nail in the bat into her father's chest. Mr. Bastion's eyesight became weary as he continued to bleed. The last thing he did see clearly was his daughter about to take another hit. Blood splattered everywhere. It rained on Purge. It decorated the walls and floors with a red texture and color. It rivered everywhere because she gave a hard hit to him. It colored the white furniture to a dark night red. Blood stained Purge's clothes. Blood ran down her mask, drizzled onto her chest, and stained her clothing. Purge finally caught her breath and looked at what she'd done. Purge then heard a grunting noise. it was her older brother regaining consciousness again. She wanted to do more damage to him because he was becoming conscious again. As her older brother was slowly getting up, Purge kicked his head with her foot and took her bat and started beating his back with it. After a minute of beating him, she pushed 2 fingers inside the wound and pulled it open, making blood come out. Ben screamed in pain, begging for Purge to stop hurting him. As the tearing of the skin got longer, she used more hands and fingers to make the tearing more painful. Purge laughed twistedly the whole time she was bringing him pain. When his whole back was opened up, or the point where you could see his spine, she knew that he was dead. So she laid his body down on the floor. She was so proud of what she has done. She looked over back at her stepmother, who was still passed out drunk. Purge caught her breath, feeling much better, and wiped some blood off her mask and licked it. The happiness ended when she realized, what have the police found? What have they found? What have I done? Purge hadn't then an idea. What if she just burned the evidence, burned down the house, and ran away? She ran down to her basement to find a gasoline can, some matches. She poured the gasoline in the basement, the kitchen, in the living room, and a little bit on the stairs. Before striking a match, she wanted to get a few things. So she went to her room she called a mother room. She walked in and took some of her mother's objects. The first thing she took was her mother's necklace. It was shaped like a pentacle because she was killed by a man who was wearing a devil's mask. Her mother's satchel, or sack, which contains something like pills for schizophrenia. The satchel was also a decent size, so Purge could contain some items in there. And last but not least, a picture of her mother. Purge took the objects and went back out into the living room and struck a match. She dropped it and ran out of the house very quick and watched the house go up in flames. She turned the opposite way to feel the smoke pressing against her back and hair. She ran out of the house, sledging her bat against her shoulder, and walked away from where the fire created itself. There was no turning back. She has made something that she cannot reverse. Three years later, Purge is now 21 years old. She was sat by a tree from the blood moon that shined above her. Hey Journal, I've been killing people, being a hitman, and running from the police for 3 years. I have to say, and I have to be honest, I never felt better being a killer. People fear you instead of you fearing people. I recently was given the name Purge the Basher by other killers around me I talked to. That's all I really have to say. For now.